All right, don't adjust anything. Don't refresh your feeds or anything. It's been, I don't know, 3 weeks, 4 weeks since Mike and I have had a chance to do a pod. That's all on me, by the way. All my faults. I have been wildly unavailable for many different reasons. But Mike, the way I figured is this: if you make something more rare, people are going to want it more. So I figured this will be our highest rated podcast ever because I imagine there have been people just walking, pacing their kitchens, up and down their streets, just like screaming at their internet providers, like, "Where is my Mike Farrell Sports Show podcast?" We got you covered. We're back. We're here. So let's get the ratings. Let's gum up the ratings in this one, Mike.
I think that's the opposite of the way it's supposed to work. I think you're supposed to do
Ah,
like 2 or 3 a week and get
ugh.
consistent. I know it sucks, but that's consistency. I don't think anybody's pining away for this, but
Hmm.
and I'm in my car again, and I bitched at you about it, but this place I live is a great place. It's a really nice place, but everybody loves it because it's a nice place. It's super expensive. It's a luxury apartments with dogs and blah blah blah. Pay through the nose for it, but people apparently love it so much that they want to use the amenities and want to sit in the freaking clubhouse and watch movies, or in the office area and watch movies on a Sunday afternoon, which I guess is their prerogative. I can't kick them out because they're paying rent. But those of us trying to work have no place to go. So here
That's
I
a
am in my
weird,
freaking
such a
car.
weird phenomenon to me, Mike, to be in my own apartment saying to myself, I really want to watch that movie. Let me go grab it and go on down to the clubhouse and lay on the couch with a space heater. That's such a, how does one get to that space in their life? I don't understand that. Make that
You know
make
what?
sense for me.
So the office area, like when you walk in, there's a table for office work, and that's where I usually do my stuff. And then to the right, there's a couple couches for whatever, discussions or conference call, whatever. I don't know. So I walk in and I'm all ready, and I look and I see a space heater. I'm like, that's odd. And then I see a backpack, and I'm like, oh. And I see a girl laying on the couch watching a freaking movie on her tablet. And then I just back out. I'm like, I can't sit where you're supposed to work and talk like this because I'll interrupt her movie. But what the hell is she doing in there? I don't know. Then I come out, and then there's a couple laying on the couch as if it's their living room watching the big screen TV in the clubhouse. And I could do it there, but again, you're going to get the background noise of whatever movie they're watching or whatever dumb comments they have to make on it. I think people are just stir crazy because it's winter, but it's a nice day. I mean, it's 46 degrees. I just think they want to get the hell out of their houses, but it makes no sense to me. And it's going to be a problem moving forward. So I've decided, I did this with Schumann a couple weeks ago. When I can't find a place, I'm just going to get in my freaking car and do it. So,
And that's what we're at. And the
you know,
video today will be legendary then.
well, we'll see. We'll see if this signal holds out and all that stuff because there's no Wi-Fi and all that. But anyways, enough of my bitching. Let's get to Stetson Bennett and his drunkenness and winning the national championship. Is anybody surprised by that arrest?
Which part? No, I mean, I think it wasn't he. Didn't he miss the next day? It wasn't after the championship game. There's typically that interview the star player does on Good Morning America or whatever, and
He didn't miss it. He
he
didn't miss
wasn't
it.
he was unavailable to attend, I guess.
He made it. And he was wasted, and it was legendary. He was on with Strahan, I think Robin Roberts, and if you Google the Stetson Bennett drunk, it comes up. That's where he's the legend. I love it. I mean, they won the national championship. Kid's a walk on, Cinderella story, all that stuff. Shows up in the next morning, didn't sleep clearly, for his GMA interview, either on the end of a bender or still in one, drunk. And it was so obvious he was drunk, and I thought it was great. Now, here we are, we a good month removed from the national championship, and now he's drunk in Texas, where he's supposed to be, I think, training for the
Yeah,
NFL draft. So, and
yeah.
knocking on random doors. And again, there's no, this is all alleged, we don't know if it was him, but guy's a partier, man.
Yeah, the story I read, I don't know the validity of it yet, was that he had turned down an invite to the Senior Bowl because he wanted to go focus on his training in Dallas, and that's where he was at, obviously, presumably training, and obviously this incident happens. I mean, it's a kid, Mike. He's having, I mean, granted, he's like 27, but he's still a younger person, right? As far as the story is, he wasn't behind the wheel of a car, right? He didn't hurt anybody. It seems like a little bit of, hey, had a little bit too much, but you got to wonder. I mean, there's already some knocks against him anyway. He's not the biggest kid in the world, not the tallest, not the fastest, not the strongest. So he already had probably some odds stacked against him. Now you add in some of this, hey, what's going on with your personal life? That's got to make it even tougher for him to potentially get to the next level and get a look from an NFL team, no?
Yeah, I saw somewhere where he's projected as a potential third round pick. Again, he's 20. I think he's 25. That works against him. Um, you know, he's not big. That works against him. He doesn't have a great arm. That works against him. All these things, prior to winning that 2 national championships, he's an undrafted free agent. And we see, like, a guy like Jake Fromm, who's at Georgia, end up sliding, I believe, to the 7th round, and who has better skills when it comes to a little bit bigger, a little bit thicker, bigger arm and all that stuff. And Fromm didn't have anything that jumped off the table. So it will hurt him for sure. And again, it sounds like mischief, but if I were those people, he's knocking on random doors drunk in the middle of the night, I'd be pretty pissed. I mean, I know he didn't get in a car, and I know he didn't, threaten any lives or anything like that, but I'd be pretty pissed. It's pretty immature. If I'm a scout, first of all, I would never touch him. I don't think he's big enough or good enough to make a difference. Maybe he's a who's the dude, Trace McSorley type, a sort of a career backup that may bounce around. But now, I'll find a Trace McSorley type who's not drunk after every national championship.
Well, you mentioned national championship, and if you've lived under a rock, you may not have known that Georgia won another one this year. I'm like, that's 2 in a row, obviously. And whenever you win 2, the next question is, can you win 3? So obviously the season has already ended, but people like yourself, this is what we do. We talk football, and people are already asking, can Georgia win again? Can they do the three-peat? Obviously, they're going to lose Stetson Bennett. Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator, is interviewing, I guess, maybe with Tampa Bay. So does he want to maybe make a jump, make a move, Mike? So just like last year, there will be some pieces moving around, as it is every year with every team. But as Mike Farrell sits here on Sunday, January 29th, 2023, from his vehicle in his luxurious apartment complex, does Mike Farrell think that Georgia is the clubhouse favorite to win a 3rd national championship in 23?
The clubhouse. That's
thank
cute.
You. Thank you.
Luxurious. I'm homeless. I might as well be homeless people in my freaking car doing this garbage. Yeah, I think they're the favorite. I think they're the odds-on favorite. You look at what they lost last year. Much of the defense, a whole lot of talent, and they just reloaded. The defense was stellar again, not to the same level, but still stellar. Obviously, it comes down to leadership for me. I think Kirby was chasing highly ranked recruiting classes, and it got him close. And then he realized, okay, I need highly, ranked recruiting classes, but I also need leadership, I need culture, I need all that stuff. And so when you get a guy like Ladd McConkey coming back, you get a guy like Brock Bowers in his 3rd year is going to come back as a leader. You get a very talented offensive line that they're going to replenish. Running backs, you go to the portal. Ra Thomas got in trouble, and it doesn't look like he's going to be there. But you can replenish your wide receiver core through the portal. You can replenish your defense if you want to. Picking and choosing off of other people's rosters nowadays. I think they're the favorite. Odds on, I mean, I can't think of anybody that could defeat them. And my closest would be Michigan and then Alabama. But I think Michigan doesn't have any question marks roster-wise. The question mark is, why the hell didn't they throttle TCU? We saw the weaknesses exposed so easily by Georgia, like so easily, embarrassingly easily. And then the week before, we saw a Michigan team that's built the same way, with a power running attack and trying to overpower a smaller TCU team, and they couldn't do it. And that makes you wonder, is Harbaugh ready to take them over the top, with game plan? And that's the one knock, because their roster, I think, is probably the best one returning to college football.
Let's stay on Georgia for a second. If Todd Monken decides to move on, how big a loss is that for Georgia?
It's a big loss, but it's something they can recover from. There's a lot of talented play callers out there. Obviously, you never want to lose the guy who, put together an offense that picked apart TCU and obviously went head to head with Ohio State. But if we're honest about this, Georgia won the last 2 national championships because of defense. They end up losing Dan Lanning. They replace him, with Schumann and Muschamp, and they're fine. I think they'd find a good replacement if he stays. And everything I'm hearing is he's not going to stay. That he's going to go off to the NFL. And I think there's a lot of play in that.
Sure.
Because of NIL, because of the portal, because of the garbage that is, the things you have to deal with in college football. I think that's part of the reason. But they'll find a great play caller. He'll have the weapons, and they'll be fine.
Bigger loss, losing Stetson Bennett or losing Todd Monken?
I I think Stetson Bennett. I just said I wouldn't draft him, but I think some of the things that he was able to do in that offense, if you look at the guys, back in Vandegrift that are the backups and the guys that are potentially going to step in here, they're more limited in what they can do outside the pocket and extend the play and do all the things that Stetson Bennett did in that offense. So you keep Todd Monken, he's going to have to sort of revamp the offense a little bit, not much. I mean, there wasn't a lot of designed plays, but it gave him the opportunity, especially in the red zone, to design running plays for Stetson Bennett, and I don't think you're going to be able to do that with these quarterbacks. But the leadership, the I guess chip on his shoulder that is Stetson Bennett, I think is harder to replace.
You mentioned teams that you think could give Georgia some maybe a run for that national championship. You mentioned Michigan, and Michigan has their head coach still? Question mark, maybe, because Jim Harbaugh said he wasn't going to the NFL. But then there's reports now that he met with Denver again last week. They were just checking in, and obviously nothing materialized. But Harbaugh and the Michigan president came out and said, "Jim's our guy. Love it here. We're gonna, maize and blue. Here we go." But then Denver comes rolling in town. We have conversation. So second year in a row, Mike. Obviously, we got the head coach going out for interviews. This time around, he pulls his name out, but there's still his name around there. Is Harbaugh staying in Michigan? Is this a good thing? What the hell's going on here?
Yeah, I think he's staying. I mean, I was surprised as you were to see that, and I think it's part of the process, but it's an odd part of the process when somebody pulls their name from the job. I mean, if I interview for a job and it comes down to like they're interviewing other people and they're trying to make, and then I say, you know what, I don't want that job. I'm going to stay where I am. For them to come to me and want to interview me, I would do it in a private business world, but in a public world where your loyalty to Michigan's been questioned over and over again. You flirt with the NFL every year. It could hurt recruiting. It could hurt your current roster. It could lead to a lot of questions internally. I wouldn't do it. I would say to Denver, no, we're not talking anymore. And he did. So it's puzzling, but I think he's staying. I think this was a power play by Jim Harbaugh against Ward Manuel, who gave him a haircut on that salary a few years ago. I think Harbaugh is very, very egotistical, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, if you're a great quarterback and a great coach, you're going to be that way. I think he's hard-headed. I think he's stubborn. I think he wanted this to play out the way he wanted to play out, and I think they're going to still be punished a little bit, but I think he's going to sign that long-term extension. Now, that's the other part, too. You see Josh Heupel get his big contract, and you see, other guys getting locked up who have been not rumored. I mean, Heupel was never rumored to leave, but he's so attractive, not only to the college football, but to the NFL. You got to shore and lock him up, period. Harbaugh, apparently, to my, knowledge, hasn't signed an extension. So I still think he's staying, but Jim Harbaugh is odd. He climbs trees, he chugs milk. He's just an eccentric dude, sleeps over at recruit's house. You just never know with him until, and then, part of the negotiation here is that he wants his buyout reduced, and to me, if I was going to sign the guy, listen, I know he's got you up against the wall. I know he's Jim Harbaugh. I know he's brought you to the playoff twice, he's beaten Ohio State twice. I know you don't want to lose him and start over. But to me, part of this negotiation, if I'm the president of the university, is like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. You said last year you wouldn't do it, and you did it again. Not doing this anymore. There is a clause in this contract that you have to sign, Jim Harbaugh, that says you're losing X millions of dollars, per NFL interview. Not speculation, but if you actually interview with an NFL team, and we all know whether that happens or not, there's just a billion ways to prove it, that you're going to get dinged big time money. Or, I'm not going to reduce your buyout, because this is the way things work and you keep doing this. But until he signs that contract, he's not back, but I think he is, and I think this team is ready. I mean, the offensive line is loaded. They did a great job in the portal on offense and defensive line. They've got the two running backs back. They've got the quarterback back. The defense is still, very, very solid. Didn't lose a ton. You're not looking at any guys on this roster at all that are like first, second round guys. There's a ton of talent coming back here, and they have to be the biggest threat, I think, over Ohio State. And even over Alabama.
All right, let's get to NIL stuff, recruiting, Mike. That's obviously where you made your bones in this business, and I know you stay as plugged into this stuff as anybody. And I want to spend some time talking Jaden Rashada because obviously that's the biggest name out there for those who may not be aware for whatever reason. Jaden Rashada was a one-time Miami commit, flipped to Florida. A kid out of Pittsburgh, California, said that he was always dreaming of playing in the SEC. We then learned from the Orlando Sentinel through their reporting that allegedly Rashada signed a contract, NIL deal, $13 million, I guess, spread over the 4-year lifetime of potentially his time in Gainesville. According to the Orlando Sentinel report, that contract got voided or canceled out sometime in November. Rashada still somehow signed his letter of intent with Florida, was supposed to enroll in school, never showed up, has asked for his release from his letter of intent. Florida granted said release, I guess, from the letter of intent. And now Jaden Rashada is still out there, Mike. So a lot to unpack here. But I know you've been one talking a lot about this $13 million number and that value that people are saying Rashad had. Plus, I think there was a signing bonus that he was getting on top of that. What do you make of the $13 million number? How true is that number? Is there any validity? Where does that come from?
So the number comes from the Gators Collective, which is very intriguing to me. This is their NIL group that is not allowed to work hand in hand with the coaching staff and with the administration, but has to work hand in hand with them because they're not going to throw big money at a guy that Billy Napier doesn't want, or a guy that doesn't fit in their roster, or a guy that isn't in need on their depth chart. So we all know that's a violation, but everybody does it. You have to communicate with the collectives as to who you want to go after, who you want to really target for NIL money, blah, blah, blah. Essentially, it's buying recruits. We all know that's the case. But what was surprising to me when I heard that, first of all, the original number, Nico Iamaleava from Tennessee's number was $8 million. And I called everybody I could find to see if that was a legit number. And it was a BS number. Okay, now this is over the 4 years. A lot of these kids, they're going to be 3 and outs, and there's contingencies in these contracts that say if you are a 3 and out, obviously you don't get that extra money. But that would be roughly $2 million a year. That I was told was BS. Now that I dig into it a little bit more, I think that number is closer to 6 million, which is a bigger number than I thought it would ever be. Because what happened here is with Miami, the number was $8 million. That was reported. And again, all this information is being fed by Rashada's agent to journalists who just report it. And I will never do that because I don't believe agents. I like agents. I think they're great. I think it's a great job. I think they're, important people, but they're also going to lie and sort of, do whatever they can for their client. So then that was 8 million. So then it goes from 8 million to 13 million. And I was like, this can't be. I talked to everybody I could, do you think this number is feasible? Is there any chance that this number, was this a number that was agreed upon? Everybody told me no. And then I talked to somebody who's a source close to the Gators Collective, and that was the ask number. So the ask number from Rashada and his agent and his father and his team was $13 million. I don't believe there was ever any deal that was agreed upon in that range. I think there might have been a similar deal to Nico, which in the $6 to $8 million, which is still overpaying for a high school kid who's never thrown a college pass. I think the ask went up for some reason, $5 million, $6 million at the end here. And I think that's where we got. So my information tells me that Florida planned to pay this kid excessively, too much. But when he came back with 13 million, it was beyond excessive. It was beyond anything that they could even think about doing or wanting to do. And they were the ones who said no. Then the expectation was that the Rashada group would sort of back down and say, okay, let's go back to our original deal. And I don't think that happened. So I think it was a game of chicken, and Florida walked away. And now Rashada is a free agent.
So why sign the letter of intent then? So why did he sign with Florida if all this stuff was still up in flux?
Well, you cannot sign an NIL agreement before you sign a letter of intent. So this is a little bit of the confusion. And McClain, we're going to talk about in a second, same sort of thing. And it came down to, in the McClain situation, here's the letter of intent, sign it. This is what we have on paper, an agreement that's not signed. And then in the McClain situation and in the Rashada situation, the number that was agreed upon was not enough. So a hard line was taken in the McClain situation. We're not going to sign. That's why he didn't sign in the early signing period. That's why he's going to sign this week in the late signing period, and he's not going to Miami because that number was jumped by the players' side. So I have no idea why Rashada would sign a letter of intent and then jump the number. Unless Florida said, hey, sign it, we'll take care of you. Even knowing that this $13 million was the ask, or even knowing that the price was going to be exponentially higher, and the kid just signed. And then when it came down to time to enroll, he said, no, you guys agreed to this, that, and the other. So you don't know who to believe. You'll hear from one side, it's them, they're pointing fingers at the other side, and the other side will do the same thing. You got to land somewhere in the middle here. I think he
Mm,
made a mistake signing the letter of intent. I think Florida did a good job letting him out of the letter of intent.
yeah.
I think Billy Napier and the Gator Collective were smart not going down this road and overextending themselves for one player, because when you do that, it becomes one of those situations where the next kid through the door is going to want more than that at quarterback. Um, you know, and then what do you do? They got DJ Lagway, who's a 2024 kid, who's to me better and higher ranked than Rashada. He's going to see this and he's like, well, I want 14 million, and then on and
Right.
on it goes. So that's, I think, what's happened.
So where obviously the the signing window's still open. Where do you think Rashada ends up?
Well, what I've heard is he visited Arizona State. That's where his dad went to school. He had a great
Mm,
relationship with Kenny Dillingham while Dillingham was at Oregon. And they were in it for him until Oregon got Dante Moore, who turned out to flip for NIL reasons to UCLA as well, which is a whole different story. But they're not going to NIL him like crazy at Arizona State. That's not the culture that Dillingham wants to start. They don't have the NIL collective that some of these other big schools do, and he doesn't want to go in on NIL versus culture, and that's kind of the decision. Last year A&M went on NIL rather than culture. Half
mm.
of those kids are transferring out. So Arizona State is in it, but not really. This comes down to Cal was interested in him. Washington was interested in him. Utah was interested in him. I think he's going to end up at TCU. From what I hear, this is the weekend he was supposed to visit TCU. I don't have confirmation whether he visited or not as we tape this. He took apparently a secret visit, which is the big thing going on, to Colorado. But I think TCU will probably be the place. I think he'll get a nice NIL deal, nothing close to $13 million, and I think he'll probably be the next quarterback at TCU, unless Dion in Colorado wow him. But I can't imagine them wowing Jaden Rashada with Dion's son being
Yeah.
the incumbent quarterback. Like, how does that work? So I think it's TCU.
Who comes out looking worse in this deal, Mike? So obviously the two principals right now with Rashada are Rashada and his camp and Florida and their collective. In your mind, who comes out looking worse on this deal? Who's got egg on their face?
Rashada does, I think, because people are going to say, oh, and there's all these memes and stuff, like they can't cash the check, right? Florida agreed to $13 million, and they went to their bank account and they found they have $2 and all this fun stuff of like they promised them this, they couldn't pay it, blah blah blah. Um, let's even say there was some sort of $13 million verbal agreement or something close to where I think is like, I'll sign, but I'm going to want a little bit more, and maybe that's the signing bonus you talked about. But I think Florida backing away from this is the smart play. Now, again, it's not going to help Billy Napier. The fans don't care. They don't care
Yeah.
about 13 million. They don't care. They just want a highly rated quarterback recruit that they stole from Miami to be on their roster. So they're going to blame Napier. They're going to blame the collective. The collective has already looked weak.
Yep.
The Kermani McClain situation made them look weak. So they're going to get hit hard. Rashada, on the other hand, now I've talked to some NFL scouts who already have a red flag on him. He just has that one red flag, hasn't even thrown a college pass because of this high ask. And now he is considered the face of NIL and what's wrong with it. And then he's just grabbing money. And so in this situation where he's, thought of just grabbing money, my thinking was that he really needed to land someplace where it wasn't about NIL. It was about his opportunity to rehab his image and just get as far away from this $1 million, NIL grab as possible. I don't think that's going to be the case. And I think he's got a lot to prove to everybody. Let's say he goes to TCU and gets I don't know, $1 million a year valuation for 4 years. He's going to have to play, and he's going to play really well to do it.
Yeah.
And if he transfers out, he's going to be deemed as another guy who didn't live up to this, that, and the other, or quits on his team. Like, he's got so many red flags against him from a collegiate, aspect right now, and in the NFL. I think he and his party have handled this improperly.
All right. Well, the name you've said a few different times now, Cormani McClain. Again, if you haven't been following along, committed to Miami, did not sign on early signing day, was very coy, at least publicly, about his intentions. Then he takes a trip to Colorado, and at which point he announces he will then become a Buffalo, joining Deion Sanders at Colorado. Mike, so how did this happen? How did Cormani go from I'm taking pictures with Mario's loafers on one day to I'm doing snow angels in Colorado the next day, and I'm going there? How did we get from there to there?
I think a lot of deception and lies again. I mean, when he chose Miami over Florida, um, I had a lot of people in my ear saying this wasn't about name, image, likeness. This wasn't a money grab, and everybody expected him to go to Florida because he's a Lakeland kid. You know, that's where he grew up dreaming of playing for the Gators. They have a good connection to Lakeland. But then I was told over and over again, this isn't a kid looking for money. This isn't a family looking for money. You know, he loves DeMarcus Van Dyke, who's a defensive analyst for Miami, not a position coach, but works with the secondary as an analyst. He was worried that Lakeland kids have gone on to Florida and haven't had the best time. You know, he's talked to a lot of people. He likes Miami. You know, obviously at the time, Ed Reed was, defensive backs coach there. Mario Cristobal is a great recruiter. All these reasons why he chose Miami for the pure reasons, and he was going to get his NIL no matter where he went. Then I heard that the asking price went up. Then I heard once the asking price was accepted, then he wanted Van Dyke as a full-time field position coach. So what happens here is, and it's not just him. I'm not blaming the kids. I'm not blaming Rashada. Everybody I talked to said Rashada's a great kid. You know, they don't have the same things to say about the people around him and
Sure.
representing him. Everybody I've talked to said Cormani McClain's a real quiet, great kid. You know, again, this is adults leading this, not the kids. And so now, it becomes a situation for Miami. It's like, well, this kid's going to pick coaches now. What if we have a bad year and he wants to get the defensive coordinator fired? Like, how far does this go? And you have to just cut bait and stop. Now, they didn't. They went to Lakeland to recruit him, to continue to recruit him when the dead period ended. And lo and behold, he wasn't there. And they were shocked. And he was up on a visit in Colorado, and he was trying to keep it all quiet because he put on his Instagram
He
story,
was in
you
Tampa,
know,
yeah.
he was in Tampa, and then
Yeah.
there's pictures of him up in Colorado with Deion, and it's just a whole game that I'm not really sure why kids play or why they're doing it. I don't know if it's Deion driven. I don't know if it's the kids, but whatever. He was up there. We all knew once he visited there, that's where he was going to commit. I'm sure he's getting, NIL money. I'm sure he's going to be taken care of. I'm also sure he's going to transfer. I mean, I'm sure of it. I mean, I don't know the kid. I don't know his situation. I just know the situation surrounding it is this is a kid from Tampa who's going away from his family
Hmm.
to the cold weather in Colorado, where they're not
Hmm.
going to be very good. I'm sorry. I mean, 1-11 isn't going to turn into 11-1. He's going to be coached by Dion, which is amazing. They've got a pretty good staff up there. He'll be taken care of. But in the cold of winter, in next December, after a 5-7 season, and it's dark at 4:30, and he's a long way from home, I think that's where he's going to be like. The portal looks pretty good to me. So, you know, I again, I think dodged bullets are important in this class. I think Florida dodged a bullet. I think they did. I think Miami dodged a bullet. You know, I think Georgia and Alabama dodged a bullet with Arch Manning. Not that Arch Manning's a bad kid, and not that his family's bad at all. They're great. They're the first family of football, but they don't need the first pass that Jalen Milroe throws, that's a bad one or an interception, or the first pass Brock Vandegrift throws that's a pick for fans to be chanting Arch, Arch, Arch. Those programs don't need that. Texas needs it. They need that recruiting boost. They need that cachet. They need that Quinn Ewers onto Manning. But these programs, honestly, they don't need this headache. Now, I think Billy Napier's in trouble. And I said this when he was hired because I don't think they're going to give Sunbelt Billy more than 2 years. And you lose those games you lost down the stretch and get drilled by Oregon State and you have a losing season your first year. You don't get Rashada. You're going into this year with a really horrible quarterback situation. Graham Mertz is your guy. That's scary. I think Mario Cristobal next season is going to struggle as well. I know he's trying to change things there as far as culture is concerned. I know he's purged a lot of players off of the roster. I know this is a
And
rebuild.
and staff. Josh Gaddis gone as offensive
He's
coordinator.
just fired too, which is an odd timing. You thought that would be closer to the end of the season, but I think they're going to struggle too. I think they're going to show some progression.
Mhm.
I don't think Mario Crispell's going anywhere. I mean, he's got a 10-year guaranteed contract from all I know. That guy's not going anywhere. And I think Dion is, maybe 2 year and done until his son graduates or moves on, and he'll leave too. I don't think these programs, as I don't know. To me, Miami and Florida, they don't need this headache. They don't need this locker room disruption for first year head coaches. Whereas Dion thrives on this stuff. So maybe Rashada should go to Colorado. Maybe Cormani will sign with Colorado this week. Maybe that's the perfect place for him. And maybe that's the chaos that Dion doesn't mind because he's got his eyes on bigger things, anyways. We all know Dion's not at Colorado for the next 10 years. Um, to me, these kids are making poor choices based on money. But listen, if I was a kid and I was being offered millions and millions of dollars, I would let my agent handle it, and I would try to get as much money as possible because I could break my leg tomorrow, or I could
Yeah.
throw out my rotator cuff. I might be done, and I might never see that money like this again in my life. So I get it on both sides, but I think the winners here are Miami and Florida.
How would you do this, Mike? If you were Mike Farrell, sports agent, advisor to, high school kids who are coming out, what strategy would you put in place? Because I've heard you say the Rashada camp didn't handle this correctly, right? Heard you say a little bit about Cormani's camp maybe not handling it correctly, adults kind of ruining kids. If you were one of these kids called you up and said, Mike, give me some info, what should I do? How would you advise a highly, sought after recruit right now to navigate this entire process?
I would try to, and again, it depends on what type of agent you are. But if you the long term success of your client is in play here, if you think Carmani McClain is a potential first round candidate down the road, which he is, I mean, he's the number one corner in the country. If you think Jaden Rashada has NFL potential, which he has that potential and those skills, you do the long play. You want money, yes, but there's a point in time where you've sort of felt in the negotiations with the collective or whoever you're talking with that you've reached a point where you don't push the envelope. And then what you do is you go off to that school. You say, guys, I did my job. You've got yourself a nice little NIL nest egg here, but name, image, likeness occurs when you actually have a name and an image and a likeness in college. Now it's up to you. Go out there, play, be great. Go out there, win the starting quarterback job, be great. And then, have that focus to get the three and out and get onto the NFL where the big money is. That's how I would approach it. I would really, I wouldn't play chicken with coaches and collectives because it besmirches the name. I can tell you also, NFL scouts, Cormani McClain, red flag. Just whether it's his fault or not.
Mhm.
Now, does that mean if he turns out to be great and runs a 4.34 at the combine in 3 years, that he's not going to go in the first 15 picks? No. But what it means is if he has an average college career, or if he transfers, or turns out to be like a Elias Ricks, who's a great example, who's not a bad kid, by the way, and shouldn't be lumped in any of this because he didn't transfer from LSU for NIL to Alabama. But let's say you have that type of career where there's question marks about you and you may be a second or third rounder, you're going to slide. You're just going to slide. You're going to slide further than Elias Ricks would. Elias Ricks is going to be asked the questions, why did you leave LSU?
Mhm.
What happened since your freshman year when you were amazing to, injury prone sophomore year to this past year was very injury prone and you didn't get better under Nick Saban? All these questions are going to be asked of him. But none of them are going to be like, well, is money your focus? Did you do this because of this? Did you hold out on LSU in high school, which NIL wasn't available then?
Right.
Did you go to Alabama for more money? Was this a money grab? These are questions these two kids are going to have to answer, whether they're great or not. And if they're not great, they're going to slide like crazy because the answer is just everybody's going to know. Everybody's going to find out. They're not just going to ask Rashada in his camp, what'd you do? They're going to ask people on the other side. They're going to ask coaches at Florida. They're going to
Sure.
ask part of the collective people. They're going to say, what happened with this kid? And it's really, so as an agent, I would sort of temper that. I don't want to besmirch the reputation of my client. I want to get as much money for him up front as possible to the point where I got to understand as the agent, I know when to say, thank you very much. That's an acceptable offer. Let's move forward.
Well, you said this earlier. You said that the NIL stuff's only going to get worse, Mike. It's not going to get any better anytime soon. What did you mean by that? Give me the foreshadowing of what are we kind of setting ourselves up for? This feels like obviously the first full cycle where this is now taking shape, but you think this is going to just get worse or get even messier as time goes on?
Yeah, I think we saw some play reduction the first year of NIL, and I can't correlate it directly. I can't say 100%, but the guys that were, really sought after in the NIL world the first year, DJ Owangalele, Dr.
Hmm.
Pepper guy, he didn't have a very good year. Spencer Rattler, number one pick in the NFL draft, lost his job, transferred out. De'Aaron King at Miami wasn't a big NFL prospect, but he was NIL'd like crazy. He got hurt, but that's just, a lot of people who invested in him, didn't get their payback. Quinn Ewers going to Ohio State. A lot of people invested in Quinn Ewers as a Buckeye, for life, lost a lot of money. Sam Howell was supposed to be the number two pick in the NFL draft behind Rattler heading into his last season. He regressed greatly. So there's a lot of examples of the first year, play kind of fell, and the opposite of that is the Bryce Youngs of the world who didn't fall and made their money, and he replaced DJ as the Dr. Pepper guy. So there's examples of both, but more the big names really failed a lot that first year. Now we're going to see more of these Rashada McClain situations than ever. We've got two examples of it that are making news. Next year we're going to have 7 of them, maybe 8 of them, and that's just the way it goes. It's going to get worse because there is no name, image, likeness. Originally was intended to allow college students who are established at their university to make money off of their name, image, and likeness. CJ Stroud, for example, has 2 great years, Heisman finalist. If he decides to come back instead of go to the NFL, which he decided to go to the NFL, he can make money because he's a established superstar. That's what it was intended for. It's not working out that way. Those guys are going to make their money, but now we're bidding for kids. And when you get bidding for kids, and people are going to say, well, this occurred all, for the
Sure.
last, 50 years. Don't be naive. No, not to this level, not to open negotiations, not to the level where you can just say, I'll give you this amount of money to come play for my school out in the open. And there's an open bidding. I know a lot of kids that were being paid in college, sort of like they went to some schools and they said, well, my ask is this because this SEC school promised me this. And the other school will be like, well, no, we're not going to touch that. We're not going to come close to that. We'll try to help you out and maybe we can come to this. But now it's just a bidding war. And that's where you're going to get into a situation where a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money, but millionaires and billionaires, they're all competitive. They don't care. They'll throw good money after bad money to their program. But you're also going to see a lot of kids looking for a fresh new start, like we see with the A&M class, leaving schools the second things go down. We're eventually going to see holdouts. There's going to be kids,
Sure.
like the backup quarterback at some school is going to see that this transfer comes in and gets X amount of money. He's like, I'm maybe not holdouts to the point where, the NFL, or anything like that with the Lamar Jackson situation, but where they're not going to jump in the portal immediately, but they're also not going to practice. We're not going to be in spring practice. It's just the way
Yep.
it is. And you're going to see a lot of things like that occur where the money imbalance at schools are going to lead to a lot of locker room issues and a lot of, you're going to see fights. You're
Yeah.
going to see locker room fights. You're going to see, big time NIL kids get punched right in the face by an offensive lineman who's making nothing. You're also going to see play on the field be affected. You're going to see
Sure.
some of these NIL brats who make a ton of money, who are very cocky. All of a sudden, maybe the left tackle trips on a plate, like that stuff. It's coming, and people, will say, "Well, it's never going to happen." Yeah, it's a human emotion. It's just the way it is. I mean, you get emotional, you do stuff, and we're going to see a whole lot of that, more of that on the field, I think, than we've ever seen.
Yeah, I think it's existing players, Mike, that have me concerned, right? Because to your point, you're gonna start counting somebody else's money, right? If you're the starting right guard and get a 50K offer, right, and the left guard gets a 100K offer, right? All of a sudden, now the right guard's pissed off because the left guard got this offer, right? So now that the right guard's going, well, I'm out of here. I'm gonna go to this school here, right? And I think you're gonna start seeing more of that internally on teams where you talked about Mario and kind of rebuilding a culture. I think you're gonna see a lot of the culture keeper, quote unquote, guys on teams who are realizing there's value outside of where they're at, or people are getting more than them. I think you're going to see a lot of that stuff moving around these days. I think you're going to see a lot of kids who are saying, well, they're paying the left tackle here 100K. They're only paying me 50K here. Why should I not go there? I think you're going to see a lot of issues with teams just unable to keep continuity together, unless you're one of the top 3 or 4 schools, right?
Right,
But keep that continuity together.
if you have established culture, okay, if you establish a culture through NIL, then it's a bad culture. If you have
Yeah.
an established culture, Alabama, Georgia, obviously two great examples here. Um, you can handle those issues
Yeah.
somehow, because again, if your left guard is upset that your right guard's getting more money for you, well, the backup left guard's probably a 4 or 5 star anyway,
Sure.
so
Yeah.
you're going to be okay. It's the programs that don't have established culture, that don't have an established winning, depth chart, that are going to be struggling. And this is what's dangerous about NIL. It's like, okay, using Miami as an example, if you build your team based on NIL culture, and every coach on Miami will deny that that's the culture that's being built here, but that's the assumption from the outside looking in,
Yep.
billion-dollar donor, bidding for kids, blah, blah, blah. Uh, it could fall apart really quickly. You can be successful, but the house of cards could crumble very, very quickly. And I think that's why, these guys like Saban and Dabo and Kirby, in 5, 10 years, we're not going to have those guys existing anymore. You're going to start moving towards mercenary coaches, not there for the long haul, doing their own thing, knowing that culture can't be established and kept. Like, I think, honestly, Dabo has done a great job, won 2 national championships, doesn't really like NIL, has been public in saying it, doesn't really like the portal. I think when he was winning the national championships before all that stuff occurred, I think he was extremely happy at his job. Now,
Yeah.
Dabo's a aw shucks, happy go lucky type of guy. I don't think he's very happy though,
Yeah.
as the head coach at Clemson right now, because of the culture of college football itself and what he's being forced to do. Um, that being said, if somebody did knock on his door in the NFL and said, "Hey, you want to come here?" Which they probably, every time somebody does that in the NFL, it's a failure. I don't know why they keep coming to college to get guys. I mean, we've had, obviously Harbaugh was an exception coming from Stanford, but very few success stories there. But I think there's greener pastures for a lot of these coaches that don't want to deal with this. I think Saban, being 70 now, if he was 55, I think in a
Yeah.
couple of years he just doesn't want to deal with this crap. And I think there's going to be a lot of coaches like that.
Yeah, I think you can absolutely drive a lot of good coaches out of the sport, right? Todd Monken, you just mentioned at Georgia, a really good coach, probably not going to be, a top 5 head coach in the country, but a really solid coach who's like, I'm done with this. Like, let me just go call plays for whoever Tom Brady's replacement's going to be, and make a good paycheck and go home and worry about that. But speaking of NFL, I got 2 other things I want to get your thoughts on. Then I'll get you out of your car here. What do you make of Brock Purdy? Not a kid that was obviously super, super well known in the college football ranks. Had a nice little career at Iowa State. Has come on the scene for the 49ers. Obviously, we'll start the championship game on Sunday. What do you make of Brock Purdy? Are you surprised at all to see him playing at a pretty decent level this deep into the playoffs for the 49ers?
I'm surprised at all 4 of these quarterbacks. And I'm trying to figure out which one is the most surprising to me. Brock Purdy was a 3-star kid out of Arizona and landed at Iowa State. Had an offer from Alabama, but it wasn't a committable offer. It was a come to camp offer, and we'll see. And
Yeah.
and it's the infamous Nick Saban quotes now is that you're not very big. You're not very, like, he didn't have a committable offer at Alabama. So Iowa State was where he was landed. 3-star kid. Jalen Hurts was a 4-star kid recruited at Alabama, had to transfer. Joe Burrow, 3-star kid out of Ohio, had to transfer from Ohio State. Patrick Mahomes, 3-star kid. Texas Tech was probably his biggest and best offer. Blah blah blah. They're all kind of surprises to me. Purdy being Mr. Irrelevant makes it a bigger story because there's so many teams that passed on him and didn't have any interest in him. I honestly think that in hindsight, that was Matt Campbell's program, the offense, the way they, want to win 10-7 football games and make it really ugly and just not open up that offense. And he didn't have any weapons. But yeah, he's a stunner. I can't say I saw any of these coming. I mean, even Jalen Hurts is the highest
Sure.
ranked out of all these guys. I did not think he would have the field vision, progression ability, downfield accuracy to be a great quarterback. He always struck me in Alabama as a first read, second read, and run guy. Oklahoma a little bit better, but Oklahoma doesn't require, at least under Lincoln Riley, doesn't require a ton of reads. So for him to get to the NFL, and he was that guy, like a tuck and run guy at first, and he's developed into a really amazing passer. He's probably the one that surprises me the most, even though he was the highest ranked. But yeah, Purdy's a great story. I mean, I don't know much about him. He's a little cocky, which
Yeah.
you have to be.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow's cocky. You have to be. Mahomes, nicest kid in the world. And Jalen Hurts, nicest kid in the world. Different personalities having success there, but I think the common denominator of it all is these kids all had a chip on their shoulder for one reason to another, and that drive to be the best sometimes is really undervalued when you look at kids that are overlooked, whether it's on high school or college or NFL draft level.
All right, let's project for a second. 49ers, obviously, Purdy playing well. You have Trey Lance, who they picked really, really high. We haven't seen a ton of on the field. Purdy got him to a championship game. Let's say they win today, get to the Super Bowl, win or lose that. What do the Niners do next year? You know Trey Lance pretty well. You know Brock Purdy pretty well. What do they do with that quarterback spot next year?
Well, Garoppolo's gone.
Yeah. Sorry,
That's
yes.
so it
That's
comes
an
down to
assumption.
Trey Lance. It comes down to Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. I mean, Brock Purdy, I think already has locked up the job next year, and you got to
Okay.
remember Trey Lance was what, the number 3 pick in the NFL draft, like
Yep.
pretty high. Um, you know, got injured, didn't really show a lot of development, but I think they're honestly ready to move on from him. They've found their guy. He's a gem. The team likes him. They play hard around him. Shanahan can work around any quarterback. Um, Now that doesn't mean they're going to jettison Trey Lance because he's got, guaranteed money as a rookie. He's in, I think, the second year of his 4-year deal. There's cap hits and all that stuff. But yeah, I think Brock Purdy's the guy. I don't think there's any decision here, unless he goes out. And again, this is before the game. Unless he goes out, you know, in the game today and just is absolutely horrendous.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, the Eagles tear him apart. He throws 3 picks, 2 of them for touchdown, whatever. Then you got to sit back and sort of, make it an open competition. Maybe it was too much for him. Maybe the level of competition just got too high, and maybe he's not our guy. But if he plays okay, and they lose, or if he plays well enough for them to win, he's the guy.
All right, last story for you. I saw this come across last week, and as soon as I saw this headline, Mike, I immediately thought of you because I feel like this is just right up your alley. So I'm just going to give you the headline, and you can just take it wherever you want. LSU overpaid Brian Kelly $1 million. Go with that wherever you choose.
I saw that too, and I was like, that's just hilarious. That's just so funny to me. It's like, I don't know the inner workings of the finances at a college, right? I've dealt with a lot of, athletic departments and things like that. But I mean, it comes down to honestly, accountants, payroll, and ADP, right? Just like every other company.
You
So
would think.
how the hell does anybody make that mistake? And how do you even walk that back? Like, somebody's fired. I don't think it speaks any ill towards LSU. I mean, mistakes are made. I have so many questions though. I just have so many
Yeah.
questions. I want, like, how did this occur?
Yeah.
What happened? What was the reaction when this did occur? And how do we talk to Brian Kelly? Did Brian Kelly know? I know I've been over the years overpaid in a bonus before a couple times, and I didn't say a freaking word. I didn't say
Sure.
one word. I just sat there and held my breath. And then, a couple weeks later, they come back and try to walk it back. I'm like, you did? Really? I didn't know I got overpaid by $20,000. That's odd. And then it was a very uncomfortable situation. But did Brian Kelly know? I mean,
So the story
how
is
does he track his finances?
the story is it's duplicate payments. So one was paid directly to the coach, which I assume is like the direct deposit hits and there's your money, and one was paid to his LLC. So essentially, exact payments. One went to him directly, one went to the LLC. So in theory, if he's not tracking his LLC, I imagine he's got some sort of business guy doing stuff like that, right? Maybe he doesn't see that account. You definitely see the personal one, I assume, right? And you're like, oh, that's my money for my coaching duties, right? So perhaps that's the only out I'll give him is I don't know how easily he tracks the LLC, but it's also $1,000,000 too, Mike. It's not like $20,000. It's $1,000,000 in the account. Someone somewhere had to be like, whoa, what's going on with that?
His contract, I believe, is what, 90 million guaranteed or something like that. I think
10-year, $100,000,000.
When you get to that level, like if I ever got to that level, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't look for my direct deposit of $1,000,000 anymore. I wouldn't look to see if my LLC got double paid with $1,000,000. I wouldn't check at all. I wouldn't. I would just spend, and just assume, listen, if my bank account says 50 million, because obviously you got pretty well at Notre Dame as well. If
Sure.
my bank account says 50 million, I'm not looking for anything. I don't give a crap. You give me a direct deposit notification of $1,000,000, I'm deleting it. And I'm looking up like, some sort of Yellowstone, videos on Facebook or something. I'm just like scrolling past it, like ding ding, $1,000,000, delete. I'm doing what I'm
Sure.
doing, and I'm just gonna not pay attention to it whatsoever. So I don't think he noticed, but let's say his LLC keeps, tight, or his financial advisor, somebody might have noticed and they come to him. What does he do? Does he go, hey, you guys overpaid me $1,000,000 or whatever? I wouldn't say a word. I would just sort of let it happen. But it's fascinating to me. $1,000,000's a lot of money to overpay somebody, but I think somebody got fired.
Yes.
And I think, it was probably a little bit of an awkward conversation. Not similar to the Ed Orgeron one where it's like, here's your buyout, Ed. It's like, okay, that's the door. Don't let it hit me on the ass. I'm out of here. Brian Kelly probably say, hey, Brian, we overpaid you $1,000,000. And he probably was like laughing and said, well, okay, take it back. I mean, you guys already paid me $100,000,000.
What's going on with the website, MikeFarrellSports.com? Obviously, a lot of good stuff going on
So
there. Recruiting off season. Give me a lowdown. What can I find there?
we're doing pretty good. We've had our peaks, where something will hit. And I love these algorithms, as you know, in the YouTube algorithm, it's just like something hits and you don't know why. I've had some things hit on Facebook, especially on NIL, that have hit, and we've had our huge days. And then we, revert back to our average and standard days. What we're putting out on a daily basis, a lot of recruiting stuff, a lot of portal stuff. The portal feed at Farrell Portal is up to 10,500, from zero when we launched it, I think in June. So, there's a lot of information you can get on the site when it comes to recruiting rumors. We don't do very many interviews with kids that said, I love this visit, I love that visit, these are my top 10, blah, blah, blah. We'll recap the news for you every night, and we'll give you rumors and what we're hearing and what we expect. So, if there is some sort of top 5 out there, we're not going to write about it and say that's his top 5. That we think he's going to land here, and this is why. And we could change our mind, of course, on that. Nicole's Harbor is a good example. He's a kid that took, I think, a secret visit to Colorado, but he's down to South Carolina and Oregon. He's visiting Oregon this weekend. He's going to make his decision next Wednesday. We'll
Like,
write and tell you
why is everybody visiting Colorado in secret? What is going on there?
I think it's a Dion thing.
Is it Dion?
It's got to be, and I don't know why. I think Dion would want it publicized. I just think it's like, because Harbor did the same thing. Like he put something up where he was in Boulder on his Instagram. And then somebody contacted his father, and his father said he's as far away from Boulder as possible. So why put up that you're in Boulder? And so are you in Boulder? Are you not in Boulder? Like, I don't know. I think it's got to be. It can't be kid driven. It's got to be Dion driven. Dion's an eccentric guy, and maybe that's what he wants. But but what we're going to do is we're going to tell you where we think they're going to land. I mean, right now, I got to get information out of his Oregon visit and see what's what. South Carolina led heading into that visit. He'd never been to Oregon. Where's he going to land? And we'll hit you with those type of recruiting articles. We got NFL draft ramping up now. We got the off season starting. Once spring football starts, we'll do a lot of content on, the spring football battles to watch. These are the top 50 running backs heading into spring football and college football. Recruiting rankings are coming up, which is a big pain in the ass to me. I've done them for 25 years. I find doing them myself very annoying. I don't know why. I always dreamed of doing them myself. I'm like, I don't want to listen to these idiots on a conference call. I don't want anybody else's opinion. Why don't I just make the rankings? And now that I can do it myself, this is the first year I'm doing it myself, I find it to be annoying. But
Hmm.
quarterbacks are coming out, this week, and then a couple days later we'll do running back. So we got that stuff going on. It's just we're trying to provide as much information as possible. It's kind of annoying to keep pushing out the same content over and over again, but that's what you have to do because you're going to get that new reader who hasn't seen it the first time and may bookmark the site and may come back. So if you follow my feeds on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, especially Twitter, you're going to be a little annoyed because you're going to see the same articles being pushed out. But that's what we have to do. But where we were April 1st in our launch to where we are now and where we're headed April 1st for our 1 year anniversary, we're trending way up in a positive direction. Is it more than I expected? No, because my expectations are always sky high. So I'm not going to be that guy who lies to you and said, "Oh, we're well ahead of schedule." No, we're not. I'm annoyed we're not where we should be in my mind. And my mind is where we should be as big as one of these other recruiting sites. We'll get there, but that drives me on a daily basis. And we put out about 10 pieces of content a day, every day for free. You have nothing to lose when you go there. You're going to see ads, of course, that's life. But I mean, it's free. You don't have to pay any subscription yet. But right now, just go on the site, click around, find some stuff for free. I don't have a message board yet. I've thought about that so people can tell me what a jerk I am like they do on Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't know yet. I'm on the Sports Illustrated platform. They don't have message boards, so I'd have to prop that up myself separately and all this other stuff. There's a lot of things that we're working on, that we have in plan. And I think it's going to get better and better and better. But the staff I have is really incredible. Everybody is just doing it to try to build their own brand, their own name. They're doing it for fun, for love of college football. That's what I'm doing it for right now. And really, they are amazing because they work so hard. I mean, there could be days where I'm just busy doing stuff like this or radio hits or conference calls. And I'll see like, yeah, there's 4 pieces of content that I didn't even ask anybody to do, and it's edited, it's put up smartly. So everybody on the site is doing a great job, and we're moving in the right direction.
Can I expect any expose or investigative pieces on Arch Manning's student ID?
No, but the funny joke there is, and I'm not clever enough to come up with these jokes. I wish I was like a clever guy who could do memes or write clever stuff and say funny stuff. He lost it the first time, and it's like Arch Manning showing poor pocket awareness because it fell
Yeah,
out of his
yeah,
pocket.
good
I
one.
mean,
Yeah,
that's
that's
funny. And
good.
then the
That's
second
solid.
time,
Yeah,
it's the same one. Yeah,
yeah,
he lost his ID twice. Every college student has lost their ID probably once. It just happens. I'm not going to knock the kid on it.
yeah.
I am going to say there's absolutely no way he can ever reach the expectations put on him. There's no way he's the number one recruit in the country. There's no way he's going to, short of winning a Heisman, being the number one overall pick in the draft, and winning multiple Super Bowls, there's no way he can live up to the expectations of that name. So for me to say that he's not as good as he's ranked it's it sounds like it's the hard thing to do. It's kind of easy. I mean, it's me versus the field.
Yeah,
Arch,
sure.
I'm taking the field. Everybody else taking Arch. I mean, how do you lose that bet? I mean, I did on Mahomes, but it can't happen again, right? It can't be
No, no,
2.
that's it. Yeah, one and done. So we're looking for a comedy writer then for MikeFarrellSports.com. So if you're a comedy writer, give Mike a look because he needs some funny pieces there. You mentioned social media. That's M Farrell Sports, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that good jazz. So make sure you follow along there. Subscribe to the show on the Believe Podcast Network. Subscribe to Mike Farrell's YouTube channel as well, where I'm sure content will be dispersed there throughout the off season as well. Mike, any other plugs we need to get in here before we get out of here?
No, I think that's it. I mean, we've got the promo plan for high school football players that are under the radar. It's funny because I'm ranking 5-star kids, who are potential first round locks, and I've been doing that all my life. And then we have the promotion plan at Farrell Promo, or you could just see it on my feed at M Farrell Sports on Twitter. We're under the radar dudes who just have nothing as far as recruiting interest. There's a fee, of course. Everything in this life is it costs money, but we push them out socially. We get coaches to watch their film because everybody follows us on social media, and it's really kind of fun that it's working. I had a quarterback in Texas who was Kate Klubnik's backup for 2 years, 5-star backup. End up transferring out of high school finally and played, a couple years on his own, but nobody really knew of him because he got up to a slow start. And he just signed with Florida Atlantic, and he had
I saw
nothing.
that. Yeah.
He had
Yeah.
nothing. Carson Kruger's his name. He had nothing. Nobody interested. He ended up getting an FCS offer from the promotion. Then he got FBS interest, and now he's Group of 5. And it's like we're seeing a lot of stuff like that happen. So that's part of the business as well. It's funny to me because I will go from breaking down 5-star film to breaking down film of kids who can't even get a profile of the places, and I find that it's not crazy. This is why I'm learning now why a 2-star kid, like Stetson Bennett, can come out and be successful, because it's part of it. Yes, you got to fit in a box. Brock Vandergrift's 6'3", 220 pounds. He's a 5-star quarterback, and he's going to be the next guy at Georgia, apparently. Stetson Bennett doesn't fit any box, but it's also who you know, what they know about you, and is it easy enough for you to get your information out there? Like if Stetson Bennett came to us, I can't say he would have been more successful because he got a walk-on offer at Georgia. But I can tell you, had Stetson Bennett had that type of promotion, he probably wouldn't have had to walk on at Georgia. Probably would have been a scholarship Power 5 kid. And there's kids out there that we're taking into the promo plan that I think are better than I expected them to be. I thought it was going to be a lot of kids with no talent, that I'm sitting here, pushing out and like, no, they're actually pretty good. So that's the other part of the business. I don't know what else. I got the gambling podcast that's done for the season. That's going to be coming back next year. There's other stuff I can't remember, but that's everything that's going on.
All right. Well, Mike's in his car. I'm going to let him go so he can go check his bank account, make sure he got overpaid, because I'm sure Mike's looking for an overpayment right now. So we'll go check the bank accounts, see if there's an overpayment. Again, thanks for listening in. Make sure you subscribe, follow, like, comment, do all that stuff. Make sure that you blow the show up so that Mike can continue to give you this great content. And I promise we'll be back sooner than later. So, Mike, get out of your car, buddy. Go inside. Enjoy your day.
All right. Thanks, Steve.